My name is Naomi Bennett. I'm 34 years old. And the strange things about betrayal is that it almost never walks in looking cruel. Sometimes it looks efficient. Sometimes it looks practical. Sometimes it arrives at 6:47 in the morning in a text message so short and so calm that your mind rejects it before your heart has time to break. That was how mine arrived. I was standing in the kitchen in work clothes, one hand around a travel mug, the other reaching for my keys, when my phone lit up on the counter. It was from Daniel. Not a call, not even a voice note, a text. Plans changed. Don't come to the airport. Ava wants the kids to have this trip with their real mother. I'm taking her instead. I read it once, then again, then a third time, because sometimes your eyes keep hoping language will rearrange itself into mercy if you look hard enough. It didn't. The coffee machine hissed behind me. The little red light on the microwave said 6:47. Outside the window, the parking lot was still blue with early morning cold, the world ordinary in the most offensive way possible. I remember thinking there should have been thunder, some cinematic warning, a crack in the air, something dramatic enough to match what had just been done to me. But the morning was quiet, still, clean. And maybe that was the cruelest part, because nothing around me looked ruined yet. Only me. Daniel and I had been together for 8 years. 6 of those years living like a married couple, even if we never cared much about paperwork. He liked to joke that we were beyond labels, mature, stable, past the age where anybody needed grand gestures to prove love. What he meant, I understand now, was that he liked the comfort of commitment without the inconvenience of accountability. When I met him, his children were still young enough to speak with that half-child, half-teen awkwardness that makes you feel time moving every time they open their mouths. Mason was 16. Chloe was 14. Their biological mother, Ava, had disappeared years earlier. Not dead, not unreachable, just gone. Drifted out of their lives the way some people drift out of responsibilities, leaving other people to carry what they drop. Daniel had been exhausted when I met him. That was the first thing I noticed. Not his face, not his voice, not even the way he stood slightly apart from everyone else at the community fundraiser where we were introduced. Exhaustion. The heavy, quiet kind. The kind worn by people who have been strong for too long and started mistaking survival for living. We talked by a folding table near the grill while somebody's uncle burned hot dogs in the background. Small talk first. Work. Weather. The usual harmless lies strangers tell before deciding whether truth is worth the risk. Then something shifted. He made me laugh. I made him admit he was overwhelmed. He told me what it had been like after Ava left. 2 children, unpaid bills, the humiliation of learning that love can abandon you and still expect sympathy. I should have paid closer attention to the way he told that story. Not because it was false, because it made him sound like the only victim in a house full of them. At the time, though, I admired him. I was working quality control at a ceramics plant outside Columbus, industrial tile production. Nothing glamorous. Long hours, concrete floors, harsh lighting, paychecks earned the hard way. But it was steady, and steady had always mattered to me more than impressive. My father used to say that being reliable was a form of character. I built my whole life around that sentence. Daniel liked that about me. At least I thought he did. He said I made him feel safe. He said I was different from women who complicated things. He said I understood real life. What he meant, I think now, was that I knew how to carry weight without making noise. We moved in together after a year. His credit was a mess, he said. Ava had left behind debt, missed payments, legal confusion, the kind of financial wreckage that keeps punishing the person who stayed. So I signed the lease alone. It was practical, temporary, just until things stabilized. That word, stabilized, it can hide an entire lifetime if you let it. From there, everything blurred into the kind of domestic routine people mistake for love because it is constant. I paid rent. I kept the utilities current. I covered the phone plan when Mason got old enough to insist he needed unlimited data and Chloe wanted a newer laptop for school. I paid car insurance when Daniel's hours got cut one winter. I bought groceries, covered emergency repairs, moved money around quietly when one account ran low. Nobody formally asked me to become the foundation. I just kept noticing where the floor was weak, and every time I did, I put my body there. That is one version of love, a dangerous one. The children were polite to me, sometimes affectionate, sometimes distant, never cruel, just careful. I learned early that when you step into a family that started before you, you are always slightly outside the frame, even when you are standing in the picture. Every holiday card, every birthday dinner, every small domestic ritual came with that invisible line. Important, but not original. I never forced it. I never asked them to call me mom. I never asked for gratitude. I only asked, privately and stupidly, to matter. Last fall, Daniel started planning a Europe trip. France and Italy. 2 weeks. Museums, cafes, old streets, soft evening light, all the things Chloe had pinned to vision boards, and Mason pretended not to care about until he started sending links to sneaker shops in Paris. Daniel said the kids deserved something beautiful. He said after everything they had lived through, they needed memories that felt bigger than struggle. I agreed. Of course I agreed. Because by then, my love had become logistical. If he had a dream, I translated it into overtime. If the family wanted an experience, I turned it into budget lines and calendar math. The flights alone were brutal. I remember staring at the total on my credit card screen and feeling my stomach dip. Still, I paid it. 3 tickets at nearly $2,000 each, plus lodging deposits and the beginning of an itinerary. Daniel kept promising he would help organize more seriously later. We opened a separate trip fund months before departure. We were both supposed to contribute. I did most of it. He added enough to keep the arrangement looking mutual. That was another thing I kept doing in those years, helping other people preserve their dignity at my expense. Then Ava came back. Not dramatically, not with tears in the driveway or some movie scene apology. She showed up at Mason's graduation wearing expensive sunglasses and a smile too polished for remorse. I wasn't there when she first appeared, but I saw the photos after. Daniel stiff beside her, Mason looking stunned, Chloe trying to act indifferent and failing, Ava standing in the center of all of it as if absence were something you could accessorize and still be welcomed for. After that, everything shifted a little, then a little more. The children started texting her regularly, then seeing her, then rearranging their emotional gravity around the possibility that this time might be different. Daniel called it complicated. He said he was trying to support whatever helped them heal. He said it would be wrong to stand in the way if they wanted a relationship with their mother. Again, I agreed. What else was I supposed to do? Be the outsider who objected to biology? Be the woman who looked insecure next to blood? So I said very little and watched too much. Ava started appearing in conversation like weather, uninvited, inconvenient, impossible to control. Chloe mentioned a lunch with her. Mason said Ava wanted to make up for lost time. Daniel said maybe people changed. I said nothing, but I noticed things. The way Daniel softened when he spoke about her, not romantically exactly, but nostalgically, which can be just as dangerous. The way he started correcting small details when I told stories about the kids, as if recent memory had become less valid than ancient connection. The way the house seemed to tilt every time Ava's name entered it, as though everyone was adjusting furniture for someone who had not earned a key. Still, the trip stayed on. At least I thought it did, until 6:47 that morning. I sat down at the kitchen table without taking off my coat. The chair made a small scraping sound against the floor. I put my phone face up in front of me and stared at Daniel's message again. Don't come to the airport. Ava wants the kids to have this trip with their real mother. I'm taking her instead. No apology. No discussion. No call to explain how a woman who had built that trip, one overtime shift at a time, had just been edited out of it. My chest hurt, but not in the dramatic way people describe heartbreak. It wasn't sharp. It was heavy, slow, like something inside me had finally stopped pretending. I opened my banking app, then the joint travel account, then my credit card statements, then the household folder I had been updating for years because good habits survive even inside bad relationships. Rent, utilities, insurance, streaming services, the family phone plan, the car payment I'd helped Daniel catch up on twice, Chloe's art software subscriptions, Mason's emergency dental bill from 2 years ago, grocery runs, holiday expenses, repair costs, school fees back when they were still in community college, 1,000 quiet decisions stitched together into a life everyone called ours because it sounded nicer than mine. The numbers did something my emotions couldn't yet do. They made it plain. By the time the second text came in, my face had gone cold. Don't make this difficult. The kids need time with her. You understand. That period at the end nearly made me laugh. You understand. The phrase people use when what they really mean is, accept this quietly so I don't have to examine what I've done. I typed 3 responses, deleted all of them. Finally, I sent, "Have a good trip." 4 words. Nothing else. No accusation, no begging, no wounded performance. Just enough civility to keep him from realizing the part of me he relied on had already started closing its doors. Then I called work and said I had a family emergency. It wasn't a lie. I spent the next hour making a list. Not because I was emotional, because I was done being emotional without evidence. 42 recurring expenses. 42. I checked them twice. By then, the sun had risen properly, pale and thin, through the kitchen blinds. Somewhere, Daniel was probably helping Ava with luggage, maybe pretending this was noble, maybe telling himself I would calm down once the children had their little reunion fantasy. Maybe assuming, the way he always had, that anything inconvenient could be absorbed by the woman who stayed. My phone rang around 9. Daniel. I watched it ring until it stopped. Then Chloe texted, "Mom said you're upset. Please don't ruin this." Mom. Not Naomi, not me. Mom. For Ava. I looked at the word for a long time, then locked my phone without replying. That was the moment something in me became irreversible. Not when he sent the text. Not when he replaced me. When the child I had spent years protecting asked me not to ruin the very thing I had built. I got up, walked to the window, and looked down at the parking lot. People loading bags into cars. A woman jogging with headphones in. A man smoking beside a delivery van. Normal lives. Ordinary mornings. Nobody knowing that upstairs, in a second-floor apartment I had paid for month after month, a woman had just finished learning exactly what role she had really been cast in. Not partner, not family, infrastructure. Useful until the original design returned. I went back to the table and started making calls. The first was the credit card company, then the streaming accounts, then the phone plan. My voice stayed level through all of it. Yes, remove that authorized user. Yes, cancel the extra lines. No, I do not want to suspend them. Yes, immediately. Each click, each confirmation tone, each politely scripted customer service goodbye felt unreal at first, then cleaner, then necessary. I wasn't trying to hurt them. That's the lie people tell when they want your obedience forever. If you stop being exploited, they call it cruelty. No, I was trying to stop disappearing. By noon, I had canceled enough to make my hands tremble. Not from guilt, from adrenaline. Because once you finally act on a truth you have ignored for years, your body doesn't always know the difference between grief and freedom. Daniel called again. This time I answered. "What are you doing?" he asked without hello. His voice was tight, low, carefully angry. The kind of tone men use when they still believe control is possible. Reviewing expenses. You shut off Chloe's phone. I canceled the line I pay for. Naomi, are you serious? I looked down at the spreadsheet open in front of me. Completely. You're overreacting. No, I'm responding. A beat of silence. Then, you know why this matters to the kids. I let that sit between us. I know why I matter less, I said. That's not what this is. It's exactly what this is. He exhaled sharply. Airport noise swelling behind him. Rolling wheels. A gate announcement. Somebody laughing in the background. My exclusion had ambiance now. You're making a scene over one trip. I almost smiled. He really believed the trip was the issue. Not the years, not the pattern, not the fact that he had handed my place to a woman who abandoned her children and expected me to nod along because blood apparently outranked loyalty. I hope you all have a wonderful time, I said. Then I ended the call. And for the first time in years, the silence that followed felt like mine. By the time the sun went down, the apartment looked exactly the same. That was the eerie part. The couch was still where it had always been. Daniel's jacket still hung by the door. Chloe's coffee mug with the chipped gold rim was still beside the sink. The framed travel print Daniel bought online because it made him feel cultured still leaned above the bookshelf, slightly crooked, because I had stopped straightening it months ago. From the outside, nothing had changed, but the structure underneath it had. And I knew it. I ordered takeout from the Chinese place down the block and ate it alone at the kitchen table with my laptop open and my phone turned face down. I wasn't hungry, not really. But I needed something physical and ordinary to keep me from floating away inside my own thoughts. Every few minutes, I glanced at the list. 42 recurring expenses, reduced one by one. Streaming services. Phone lines. The gym membership Daniel swore he would start using seriously every January. A monthly meal subscription that had become another expensive fantasy of domestic excellence nobody had time to cook. A detailing package for the SUV. Small comforts. Medium luxuries, quiet assumptions. All of them had lived under my name for so long that people had stopped seeing them as favors and started seeing them as weather. Just there. Expected. Permanent. That night, Chloe texted again. Can you please not do this right now? We're literally boarding. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then I typed, I'm not doing anything to you. I'm stepping back from what I was paying for. I almost added more. Something about what it feels like to be erased from a trip you funded. Something about the insult of being asked to behave maturely by people who had treated me like an optional expense. But I didn't. Explanations are wasted on people still enjoying the benefits of your silence. I put the phone down and opened the lease agreement. My name was the only one on it. I had known that, obviously. I was the one who signed it 5 years earlier, after Daniel sat across from me in a coffee shop looking tired and embarrassed, and said his credit still hadn't recovered enough to qualify. He had reached for my hand when he asked, his voice soft, grateful. Said he hated needing help. Said once things got better, we'd refinance life itself if we had to. There are promises people make because they believe them, and promises people make because they need you calm. I was beginning to understand which kind his had been. The next morning, I called a lawyer, not because I needed permission, because I needed precision. A coworker had once mentioned a family law attorney named Melissa Grant, sharp, practical, not sentimental about anybody's mess. I found the number in an old text thread and called before I could talk myself out of it. Her assistant took a few notes, then put me through faster than I expected. Melissa's voice was calm, clipped, efficient. What can I help you with? I gave her the short version. 8 years together, shared household, lease in my name, most recurring expenses in my name. Europe trip paid mostly by me. Boyfriend replaced me with his ex-girlfriend at the last minute because the children wanted their real mother there instead. There was a pause on the line. Then, how old are the children? 24 and 22. All right, she said. Paper rustled somewhere near her desk. And to be clear, you and he are not legally married. No. Any jointly owned property? No. Shared bank accounts? One joint household account with limited funds left in it. Anyone else listed on your lease? No. She didn't react emotionally. I appreciated that immediately. You need documentation, she said. Every payment, every account, every cancellation, every communication from this point forward. If you intend to leave, do it lawfully and cleanly. Do not threaten, do not hide assets, do not destroy property, and do not get dragged into emotional arguments that create a record against you. I leaned back in the chair. So I can leave? Yes, she said plainly. You can leave. Whether you should, morally, is not my department. Legally, you can. Something in my chest loosened, not because I had been unsure, because hearing the truth out loud from someone with no stake in my pain made it feel less like revenge and more like reality. Before we ended the call, she added, one more thing. What? People who benefit from your labor often call boundaries cruelty the first time you enforce them. I said nothing. She said, don't let their panic rewrite the facts. After that, I called property management. Karen, the office manager, answered on the second ring. Cheerful voice. Too cheerful for the kind of call I was making. I need to discuss ending my lease early, I said. She pulled up my file, asked a few practical questions, then told me what I needed to do. 30 days notice, digital form. Showings could begin almost immediately because the rental market was tight. Are you relocating for work? She asked. Something like that. Well, she said, lowering her voice the way strangers do when they sense trouble but want to sound helpful rather than curious. If you submit today, I can probably get this moving quickly. I thanked her, signed the form within minutes, sent it back before my hand had time to shake. Then I sat there in the kitchen table staring at the confirmation email, realizing I had just done something no amount of apologizing could reverse. I hadn't made a threat. I had started an ending. The first real crack came later that afternoon. Mason texted, "Why is my phone off?" No hello. No context. Just outrage dressed as confusion. I typed, "Because I canceled the line under my account. You'll need your own plan." He replied almost instantly, "Are you serious right now?" Yes. 3 dots appeared, vanished, came back. "Mom says you're being dramatic." I looked at the message and felt something bitter and exhausted rise in me. Not because he called me dramatic. Because even now, from another country, with his mother's ex in my seat and my money under their vacation, Daniel was still narrating me to the children in a way that protected himself. Of course I was dramatic. That sounded better than right. I locked my phone and kept going. Insurance next. The SUV policy had been under my account for 3 years after Daniel missed too many payments during a rough patch, and I temporarily folded it into my own coverage to save money. Temporary, like so many things that became permanent the second I got used to carrying them. My insurance agent knew me by name. When I asked to remove the vehicle, he hesitated just enough for me to hear surprise. "Everything okay?" "Yes," I said. He didn't believe me. But professionals know when not to ask questions whose answers might force them into intimacy. "I'll send the updated documents over this afternoon." "Thank you." The gym membership came next. Then the meal kits. Then 3 separate auto-renewing subscriptions Chloe used for design tools and cloud storage upgrades that Daniel had once promised he would take over once his bonus came through. I remembered that conversation so clearly I could see the angle of the lamp in the room where he said it. He never took them over. I never brought it up again. That was the rhythm of our life. His intention, my follow-through. His gratitude, my invoice. At some point, I wandered into the bedroom and stood in the doorway. The closet looked like a visual summary of the relationship. My clothes took up one narrow section. Work shirts, jeans, 2 winter coats, 1 black dress I had worn to funerals and company dinners, and 1 parent-teacher event back when Chloe still wanted me there for those things. Daniel's side spread wide and careless. Jackets, shoes, old concert t-shirts he never threw away because memory mattered more to him than order. The dresser was half mine, except not really. One drawer had slowly become household overflow. Chargers, travel documents, spare medication. Random things that had nowhere else to go, but somehow ended up in my space. I stood there thinking about how quietly women disappear. Not in headlines. Not in dramatic scenes. In inches. A drawer here. A compromise there. A financial just for now. An emotional adjustment, so small it barely counts until one day you look up and realize your life has been annexed. I started packing that night. Not everything. Not yet. Just what was indisputably mine. Documents first. Passport. Birth certificate. Tax records. Bank statements. Old employment contracts. My father's watch, the framed photo of my parents from before my mother got sick, a ceramic bowl I made in a weekend class years ago that Daniel once called lopsided with a laugh, not knowing I loved it precisely because my hands had made it. I wrapped it in a dish towel and put it in the first box. There is something sobering about discovering how little of a shared home actually belongs to you. The sofa? Daniel picked it. The dining set? Bought on sale with money from the joint account. The artwork? Mostly his taste, or Chloe's, or the strange compromise version of both. The kitchen gadgets? Half gifts, half conveniences, none important. My life reduced to documents, clothing, a few books, tools, small objects with honest origins. By midnight, I had 6 boxes stacked neatly against the wall of the guest room. My phone buzzed again just after 1. "Daniel." I let it ring out. Then another text. "You need to calm down before we talk." I actually laughed. A quiet, ugly sound in the dark. Because there it was again. That language men use when they cannot control the consequences of their choices, so they try to control the tone of your response instead. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I was wrong." Not even, "Help me understand why this hurt you." "Calm down." As if my composure were the problem. I didn't answer. The next day, the apartment showing happened faster than I expected. A young couple came by in the afternoon with Karen from management. They wore that cautious optimism people wear when they are trying not to love a place before knowing they can have it. She asked about natural light. He asked about parking and commute times. Karen did most of the talking, while I stood in the kitchen pretending I wasn't watching strangers imagine a future in the rooms where my own had just collapsed. "This is lovely," the woman said, glancing into the living room. "It feels stable." That word almost took me out at the knees. Stable. I smiled anyway. They said they'd let Karen know by evening. By 6, they'd taken it. Move-in date, the 1st of next month. I signed the termination paperwork without rereading it. Afterward, the apartment changed temperature in my mind. It stopped being home. It became a location. That night, Chloe called instead of texting. I considered ignoring it, but something in me wanted to hear her voice. "Naomi?" she said the second I answered, and for one stupid half-second, hearing my name from her made my throat tighten. "Yes." "What is happening?" She sounded tired, not cruel, not arrogant, just overwhelmed in that young adult way that still expects someone older to catch what's falling. "I'm making changes," I said. "Because of the trip?" I looked at the boxes in the guest room. "Because of much more than the trip." She was quiet. Then, carefully, "Ava being here is complicated." I closed my eyes. Complicated. That pretty little word people use when they want pain handled without accountability. It isn't complicated to me, I said. Your father removed me from a trip I helped pay for and gave my place to the woman who walked away from all of you. She's still our mom, and I was still good enough to build the life she came back to interrupt. Silence. On the other end, I could hear hotel noise, elevator ding, distant voices, a television maybe. Then Chloe said, softer now, I didn't think you'd take it this far. There it was, the true sentence beneath everything. Not, I didn't know it would hurt you. Not, I'm sorry. I didn't think you would act. I felt suddenly very calm. That, I said, is the reason I have to. She inhaled like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. I do love you, I told her, because it was true, and because truth is crueler when it is clean. But loving people who don't choose you back has a limit, Chloe. She started crying then. Not dramatically, just that sharp, uneven breathing of someone too young to disguise emotion when surprise cracks them open. Please don't disappear when we get home. I looked around the apartment, at the boxes, at the walls, at the life that had been treating my endurance like a birthright. I already did, I said quietly. Then I ended the call. By the end of the week, I had packed almost everything that was mine. 8 boxes, 2 duffel bags, 1 suitcase. That was all. 8 years. And my real life fit into the back of an SUV and a storage unit on the east side of town. I drove it there on a gray Friday morning, beneath a sky that looked rubbed thin. The facility smelled like dust and cold metal. The clerk at the front desk wore a fleece vest and talked to me about climate-controlled options, as if my life weren't actively splitting at the seams. I appreciated him for that. I loaded the unit slowly, box by box, document case last. When I rolled the metal door down, the sound echoed longer than it should have. I stood there with my hand still on the latch, breathing in that odd warehouse chill, and felt lighter than grief should allow. On the way back, I stopped at the post office and opened a P.O. box in another town. Not because I was being dramatic, because I wanted distance measured in something more concrete than emotion. That evening, I transferred the remaining money out of the joint household account into my personal one. There wasn't much left after the trip expenses, but enough to matter, enough that leaving it there would have been another act of self-betrayal disguised as generosity. Daniel called within 20 minutes. I answered this time. You emptied the account. I moved my money. It was our account. It was funded mostly by me. Naomi. He said my name like a warning. I had spent years responding to that tone, soothing it, softening before it sharpened. Not this time. You made your decision Monday morning, I said. I'm making mine now. You are acting insane. No, I am acting late. He went quiet. Then he lowered his voice, which was always the most dangerous version of him, calm enough to sound reasonable, cold enough to erase your right to anger. So that's it? You're just going to blow up 8 years because Ava came on one trip? I looked down at my hand and noticed it was perfectly steady. It's not because she came, I said. It's because you gave her my place, like it was yours to give. Another silence. This one heavier. I think that was the first moment he understood I might not be bluffing. Where are you? He asked. Not where you left me. Naomi, stop. No. You're embarrassing yourself. I smiled then, though there was nothing happy in it. No, Daniel. I spent years humiliating myself. This is the first dignified thing I've done in a long time. He hung up on me. I stood in the kitchen afterward with my phone in my hand, listening to the refrigerator hum, and realized something almost frightening. I was no longer afraid of losing him. The loss had already happened. What remained was paperwork, logistics, and the slow, sacred work of refusing to hand myself back. By Sunday, I had a furnished room lined up in a smaller town 2 hours away and an interview scheduled at a manufacturing plant that paid slightly better than my current one. Same kind of work, different building, different air, no history in the walls. The timing was obscene and perfect. They were still in Europe, still posting photos. Mason in front of a cathedral. Chloe smiling beside a river at dusk. Daniel tagged in a cafe picture he didn't post himself. And Ava, somehow always near the center of the frame now, like a woman stepping back into a role she had forfeited years ago and finding the stage still lit for her. I didn't comment. Didn't block anyone either. I just watched long enough to confirm what I needed to know. Nobody looked haunted. Nobody looked conflicted. They looked like people enjoying a story they had chosen. So I made sure I would not be there when the ending changed. The last night I slept in the apartment, I lay awake on the mattress without sheets, listening to the emptiness. Rooms sound different when they stop belonging to you. The air becomes thinner somehow, every pipe noise sharper, every passing headlight more temporary. I thought about the woman I had been 8 years earlier, the one who mistook being needed for being loved, the one who believed patience could secure belonging, the one who kept translating disrespect into misunderstanding because the truth was too expensive to face. I didn't hate her, but I could not keep being her. At 5:30 the next morning, I got up before sunrise, showered, dressed, loaded the last of my things, and took one final walk through the apartment. Kitchen, living room, hallway, bedroom, guest room now empty, except for dust outlines where the boxes had sat. The place looked untouched in all the ways that mattered least. I left my keys on the counter beside a note for management. Nothing for Daniel. Nothing for the children. Some endings don't need speeches, they need doors. As I pulled out of the parking lot, my phone buzzed once. A text from Daniel. We land tomorrow afternoon. We need to talk the second we're back. I looked at the message at the red light, then set the phone down again without answering. No, I thought. You need to talk. I'm already done listening. They landed on a Tuesday. I know that because by then I had already been in Ashford for 3 days, long enough to memorize the cracks in the ceiling above the narrow bed in the furnished room I rented over a hardware store, long enough to find the diner with the decent coffee, long enough to understand that quiet can feel unfamiliar before it starts to feel merciful. Ashford wasn't glamorous. That was part of the appeal. A smaller town west of Columbus, blue-collar, practical, the kind of place where people asked what shift you worked before they asked anything personal. The room came with mismatched furniture, one stubborn window, a dresser that smelled faintly of cedar, and a tiny television mounted too high on the wall. It was nothing anyone would envy. It was the first space I'd had in years that didn't feel like a negotiation. Bishop Materials hired me after one interview. Same industry, same kind of work. Ceramic composites, industrial surfaces, long production runs, exact measurements, steady money, better schedule. The plant manager looked over my resume, nodded twice, and said, "You know how to keep things from slipping below standard?" "Yes," I told him. What I meant was more than tiles. I started Monday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, while I was on my lunch break in a quiet room with a vending machine and a humming refrigerator, my phone lit up with the first missed call from Daniel. Then another. Then Chloe. Then Mason. I watched the screen vibrate across the table and felt nothing at first but distance. Not emotional distance. Geographic distance. A real one. 2 hours of highway. One surrendered apartment. 8 years finally behind me in mileage instead of memory. I let the calls ring out. At 4:13, Chloe posted a picture to social media. No filter, no clever caption. Just the parking lot outside the old apartment building, 2 suitcases near the curb, and the kind of chaos that happens when people are forced to discover that consequences are not theoretical. The caption was one sentence. "Why are there strangers in our apartment?" I looked at it for a long time. Then I locked my phone and went back to work. That night, the calls became frantic. 17 missed calls by 8:30. 9 texts. 3 voicemails. Then a call from an unknown number. I answered that one. Naomi? Daniel's voice. Not calm this time. Not polished. Stripped down by panic. "Yes. Where are you?" I sat on the edge of the narrow bed and looked out the window at a darkening street below. A woman crossed under a streetlight with grocery bags in both hands. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked twice and stopped. "Somewhere else," I said. "The apartment is gone." "Yes." "There are people living there." "Yes." He exhaled sharply, like anger and disbelief had collided in his chest, and neither knew which one deserved the front seat. "You actually did it." I almost laughed at that, as if he had still expected me to be waiting there, wounded but available, ready to explain myself in the kitchen, while he unpacked souvenirs and regret in equal measure. "You told me not to come," I said, so I didn't. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Make this into some cold little line. We need to fix this." I leaned back against the wall. There's nothing to fix. In the background, I could hear noise, car doors, voices, the hollow confusion of people standing outside a place they thought still belonged to them. Then Chloe's voice, faint and tight, somewhere near him. What is she saying? Daniel must have covered the phone because the sound shifted, blurred, came back. "Where are we supposed to go?" he asked. "That isn't my problem anymore." Silence. Then, lower, more dangerous. "You left my children stranded." I felt something inside me go very still. "Your children," I repeated. "Yes, my children." "Interesting," I said quietly. Because when it came time to decide who counted as family, I was suddenly the only one expected to understand being left behind. That is not the same thing. It's the same principle. "Naomi." "No, you do not get to remove me from your life when it's convenient, and then put responsibility back on me when reality turns inconvenient for you. His breathing changed. I knew that rhythm, knew when anger was about to turn strategic. He said more carefully now, the trip was a mistake. There it was. Not cruelty, not betrayal, a mistake. A harmless word stretched over a deliberate act. How did it go? I asked. He didn't answer right away. That told me enough. But then he did. Ava left 2 days early. I blinked once. Of course she did. She said she had work. Did she? I asked. How original. He didn't defend her. That was new. I let the silence do what silence does when people finally run out of lies sturdy enough to stand on. Then Daniel said, quieter now. The kids are upset. I looked down at my hand resting on the blanket. Steady. Completely steady. They should be. They didn't think... I know, I cut in. None of you thought. He started to say something else, but another voice pushed in. Mason. Louder. Sharper. Closer to the phone now. What the hell is wrong with you? Daniel didn't stop him. That, somehow, hurt less than it once would have. I took a breath. A lot became clear to me, I said. You can't just disappear, Mason snapped. You shut off the phones, emptied the account, gave up the apartment. What did you think was going to happen when we got back? I stared at the wall across from me. What did I think was going to happen? Exactly this. The difference was that I had finally decided I was allowed to think beyond their comfort. I thought, I said, that the people who wanted their real family would figure out how to live like one. He cursed under his breath. Then Chloe's voice again, this time closer, thinner, trying harder not to break. Please. That one word landed somewhere human in me. But pain does not always earn access. Naomi, please, she said again. Can we at least talk in person? No. The answer came out so easily it startled even me. She heard it too. I could tell by the silence that followed. Then Daniel was back. Where are you staying? That's not information you need. We are standing in a parking lot with luggage. I looked toward the small dresser where my clothes were folded in clean stacks no one could touch. Then I suggest you find a hotel, I said. We can't afford... He stopped. Too late, because there it was again. The truth. Not emotional devastation, not heartbreak, not the loss of me. Exactly. The loss of what I paid for. I closed my eyes for a second. When I opened them, my voice was softer than before, which made it crueler. You should call Ava, I said. She's their real mother. He hung up on me. The phone stayed hot in my hand for several seconds after the call ended. I put it face down on the bed and sat in the quiet. I thought I would shake after that. I thought maybe guilt would come roaring in once their panic had voices and names and tired airport faces attached to it. Instead, what I felt was grief without confusion. That was new. Not the kind of grief that begs. The kind that buries. An hour later, the text started again. From Daniel. This is insane. You're punishing all of us. At least tell Chloe where her things are. Answer me. From Mason. I can't believe you did this. After everything. From Chloe. Please just tell us if you're okay. That one sat on the screen longer than the others. Not because it changed anything. Because it was the first message all day that wasn't asking what I could still provide. I answered only that one. I'm fine. Nothing else. No location, no invitation, no softness they could use as a door. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise and went to work. That was the strangest part of starting over. Pain still exists, but shifts still start at 6. The production floor smelled like heat and dust and wet stone. Machines whirred, clipboards moved, measurements mattered. A supervisor named Tom showed me the updated reporting system and spent 10 full minutes complaining about a supplier issue as if my life were not currently in ashes. It helped more than sympathy would have. At lunch, Greg from Line 3 sat across from me and asked where I was from. Outside Columbus, I said. Family there? Not anymore. He nodded once and unwrapped his sandwich. That's usually how people end up here, he said. Then he changed the subject to baseball. I appreciated him for the rest of the week. By Thursday, Daniel had stopped calling every hour and started trying every angle instead. Anger first, then reason, then wounded nostalgia, then practical questions disguised as concern. Mason needs access to his documents. Chloe left medication in the bathroom drawer. You are creating unnecessary chaos. We should talk before you make this worse. I responded only when something required factual clarification. The documents were in a labeled file box in storage. The medication had been left in the apartment bathroom and was no longer my responsibility. No, I would not meet in person. No, I would not return. Late Friday night, Chloe sent a longer message. I read it sitting by the window with a cup of tea balanced on the sill. I know you're angry. I know you have a right to be. But I need you to understand that none of us thought this would happen. Mom, Ava, showed up and everything got weird so fast. Mason got excited. Dad got hopeful. I thought maybe this was one of those chances people regret not taking. I thought if she came on the trip, maybe something would heal. I didn't think it meant losing you. I read the message twice, then a third time. There was something achingly young in it. The way she still believed terrible outcomes required terrible intentions, as if ordinary selfishness were not enough to wreck lives. I typed slowly. You didn't think it meant losing me because you never believed I would leave, no matter how badly I was treated. That is part of the problem. I stared at the words before sending them, then added one more line. You all built your choices on the assumption that I would keep absorbing the cost. I sent it and set the phone down. She didn't answer that night. But Daniel did. Of course he did. A minute later. Don't guilt the kids for this. I looked at the screen and felt something almost like pity. Even now, he wanted to manage the narrative, to step between consequence and comprehension, to keep everyone emotionally vague enough that accountability never had to land in one place and stay there. I replied, I'm not guilt-tripping anyone. I'm describing reality. He wrote back immediately. Reality is that families make mistakes and work through them. I stared at that for a long time. Families make mistakes. The sentence was almost beautiful in how efficiently it erased hierarchy, as though what happened had been mutual, as though I had also replaced him with someone who abandoned him, as though I had sent the text, as though I had boarded the plane. I put the phone away without answering. The next week brought legal language. Not a full lawsuit, not yet. Just enough posturing to announce that Daniel still believed pressure might accomplish what remorse had failed to secure. A formal-looking email arrived from an attorney whose name I didn't recognize, suggesting there were concerns about shared household reliance, sudden deprivation of expected residence, and possible damages related to financial disruption. I forwarded everything to Melissa. She called me during my lunch break. I stepped outside the plant to take it. The wind was cold and smelled like rain. This is noise, she said after a brief hello. He has no case worth fearing. So why send it? To scare you. To make you negotiate from emotion instead of law. I leaned against the brick wall. Will it work? Not if you remember what happened, she said. Did he have rights to the lease? No. Did you steal from him? No. Were the children minors? No. Then let him panic on his own time. That night I slept better. Not because the threat had disappeared, because someone else had named it for what it was. Noise. A few days later, Patricia called, Daniel's sister. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Her voice came in sharp and exhausted, like she had been rehearsing indignation all afternoon. Do you have any idea what kind of mess you left? I sat down at the small table by the window. I cleaned up my own. Oh, don't do that calm voice with me, she snapped. Chloe's on a friend's couch half the week because they had to cram into a one-bedroom. Mason's trying to pick up extra shifts. Daniel is a disaster. I let her speak. Sometimes people reveal more in accusation than they ever would in confession. He should have thought of that before he sent the text, I said. She said she was sorry. She? I asked. Patricia went quiet for half a beat. Then, Daniel. Interesting. Not Ava. Not the children. Daniel. The one person who had actually had the power to stop it. He can be sorry, I said. Some things still end. You're being cold. I looked around the room I had paid for myself. At the folded laundry on the chair, at the cheap lamp, at the single plate in the drying rack from dinner the night before. No, I said, I'm being done. She exhaled hard into the phone. You know what his problem was, she said. He always thought if he just gave the kids enough, made enough room, maybe Ava leaving wouldn't define them. I said nothing. Then she came back, Patricia continued, quieter now. And he got stupid. He wanted a version of his life that didn't exist. There it was, the nearest thing to truth anyone had offered me. Not love, not healing, fantasy. I wasn't obligated to fund his fantasy, I said. No, Patricia admitted. Then, after a pause that surprised us both, you weren't. We ended the call without resolution. I sat there afterward thinking about Daniel in terms I had avoided for years. Not as a villain. Something more disappointing. A man so desperate to rewrite his own humiliation that he set fire to the person who had helped him survive it. That was worse somehow. More ordinary. Less cinematic. And therefore more real. 2 weeks after they came home, Chloe emailed me. Not texted. Emailed. The subject line was simple. I'm sorry. I didn't open it right away. I finished dinner first, washed my plate, wiped the table, folded the dish towel in half, and hung it over the handle of the tiny oven. Only then did I sit down with my laptop and click. The message was long. Long enough that by the third paragraph, I had to stop and look away from the screen. She wrote that the trip had gone wrong almost immediately. Ava had spent half of Paris on her phone, missed museum reservations, wandered off for private calls, made vague promises about future visits the same way people toss coins into fountains, symbolic, easy, meant to feel meaningful while costing almost nothing. In Rome, she left a dinner early because she was overwhelmed. By the last 2 days, she was barely pretending anymore. Then she changed her return flight and disappeared before the rest of them even boarded home. Chloe wrote that Daniel had tried to act like it was manageable, then started unraveling the second they landed and found the apartment gone. She wrote that Mason was angry, but not only at me. She wrote that she understood now, at least partly, that what they had mistaken for permanence had actually been me. Not fate, not luck, not some naturally occurring stable home. Me. I read that line 3 times. Then I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a while with only the window reflecting my face back at me. It should have felt victorious. It didn't. Just late. Painfully, uselessly late. When I finally answered her the next morning, I kept it short. I appreciate the apology. I believe you mean it. But understanding what you lost does not restore it. I hope you learn from this. I hope all of you do. I almost there. Then I added, sometimes the person who stays the longest is still the easiest one to betray, because everyone assumes they'll survive it. I sent it before I could edit myself into softness. She didn't reply. But later that afternoon, while I was checking sample measurements under warehouse lights, I felt something settle in me that had been restless for weeks. Not peace exactly. Not yet. Something sturdier. The knowledge that they were finally living inside the truth I had been carrying alone, and that I was no longer required to carry them with it. 6 weeks after I left, the legal email came in at 7:12 a.m., right as I was tying my boots. For a second, the timing felt like a ghost of the morning everything broke. Different message. Same hour. This one was from Melissa. Subject, filing received. I opened it standing in the kitchen of the small apartment I'd moved into 2 weeks earlier. No more rented room above a hardware store. This place was mine. Modest, clean, quiet. 1 bedroom, narrow balcony, a kitchen that didn't try to impress anyone. The email was short. Daniel had filed a claim requesting temporary financial support. He cited shared household dependence, sudden displacement, and hardship caused by unilateral withdrawal. I read the words once, then again. The language was polished, legal, careful, but underneath it, the meaning was simple. He still believed I owed him something. I set my phone down and finished tying my boots. Then I wrote back. Understood. Proceed. Melissa replied within minutes. We'll handle it. You're in a strong position. Do not engage directly with him about this. I didn't need the reminder. I had stopped engaging with Daniel emotionally weeks ago. Now I stopped engaging with him entirely. The mediation was scheduled quickly. He wanted money, not reconciliation. That part mattered. It clarified something I think I already knew, but hadn't named yet. Regret doesn't always come from love. Sometimes it comes from inconvenience. We did the session over video. I sat at my small kitchen table, laptop open, a glass of water to the side. Outside, the afternoon light stretched across the floor in long, quiet lines. No noise, no chaos, no one interrupting. On the screen, Daniel looked tired. Not broken, not transformed. Just worn. There's a difference. He didn't say hello, just nodded once, like we were coworkers forced into a meeting neither of us wanted. The mediator spoke first. Neutral tone. Polished script. Explained the purpose, the expectations, the potential outcomes. Then Daniel's attorney outlined his position. 6 years cohabitation, intertwined finances, reliance on my income for stability, abrupt termination of support. Words stacked carefully, like bricks trying to rebuild something that had already collapsed. Melissa waited until they finished. Then she spoke. Calm. Precise. Ms. Bennett was the primary financial contributor for the duration of the relationship. The lease was solely in her name. The accounts in question were funded predominantly by her income. There is no legal obligation for her to continue providing financial support to an unmarried partner or to adult children not legally hers. She paused, then added, almost casually, especially under circumstances where she was explicitly excluded from a major family event she financed. The mediator glanced at Daniel. He didn't look at me. That, more than anything, told me everything I needed to know. If he had truly understood what he had done, he would have looked. Instead, he kept his eyes on the table. The discussion moved quickly after that. Numbers floated. $2,000 a month. $500. $0. Each one less about fairness and more about testing how much pressure could bend me back into usefulness. I didn't speak once. I didn't need to. In the end, they settled on nothing. No support. No obligation. No extension of a life that had already ended. The call disconnected without ceremony. No goodbye. No final attempt at something softer. Just a screen going dark. I closed the laptop and sat there for a long time. Not thinking. Just existing. The divorce, if you could call it that without a marriage license, finalized 60 days later. Paperwork. Signatures. Electronic confirmation. A legal ending to something that had already died the moment a text message replaced me. Melissa sent the final documents with a short note. You're clear. That was it. No congratulations. No reflection. Just the truth. Clear. Life after that didn't transform into something cinematic. There was no dramatic glow-up. No sudden perfect happiness. Just simplicity. Work. Coffee at the diner. Evenings that belonged entirely to me. Groceries I chose without compromise. Bills I paid without resentment. Silence that didn't feel like absence. That was the strangest adjustment. Learning that quiet is not the same as loneliness. 3 months after everything ended, Mason reached out. Not by text. By email. Short. Direct. I get it now. Not all of it. But enough. I was angry because it was easier than admitting we screwed up. I hope you're doing okay. I read it once, then closed it. Not because I didn't care, because there was nothing left to fix. Chloe didn't write again after her apology. Daniel didn't either. That was the final truth of it. When I stopped being useful, I also stopped being pursued. Not dramatically, not cruelly, just quietly. The same way I had once disappeared inside that relationship. 4 months after I left, I took a day off work and drove out to a state park about an hour from Ashford. It was early morning. The air still cool enough to feel clean. I walked a trail that curved around a small lake, the water moving gently under a light wind, ripples catching sunlight in broken patterns. I sat on a wooden bench near the edge. No phone, no noise, just water and trees and the steady rhythm of something that didn't need me to maintain it. And for the first time since everything happened, I let myself think about it from the beginning. The cookout. The way Daniel had looked at me like I was relief. The years that followed. The bills. The small compromises. The quiet ways I had made myself smaller to fit a life that never fully made room for me. And then that morning, 6:47 a.m. The message. Don't come. I used to think that was the moment everything broke. Sitting there by the water, I understood something different. That wasn't the moment it broke. That was the moment it revealed what had already been broken for a long time. I just hadn't wanted to see it. Because seeing it would have meant leaving. And leaving meant losing everything I thought I had built. But I hadn't lost everything. I had lost an illusion. There's a difference. A big one. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, watching the water move. No anger. No bitterness. Just clarity. Daniel had wanted a version of his life that didn't exist. Ava had proven exactly who she was. The kids had learned the hard way what stability actually looks like. And me? I had finally learned that love without respect is just unpaid labor dressed up as loyalty. I sat there for a long time, long enough for the sun to rise higher, long enough for the quiet to settle deeper into my bones. When I finally stood up, nothing around me had changed, but I had. I walked back to my car without looking back at the lake. Not because it wasn't beautiful, because I didn't need to hold on to it. That was the difference now. I didn't need to hold on to anything that didn't choose me back. And for the first time in years, I was free.